Hello, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. This is a special episode. It's episode 68. I was able to finally get a hold of this guy you see on screen. This is Mr. Dick Govig, the first ever state champion in Britt wrestling history. He actually won 2 state titles, and then he won a AA title at the University of Iowa in 1954. So welcome, Dick. How you doing today?
Doing good.
Good. I've been excited for this one. I told Dick I've been trying to get this for 2 years. So here we go. Yeah, like I said, Dick was the first of 47 state champions in Britt West Hancock history. So this is gonna be a fun episode. Before I get to Dick, though, I do have 3 sponsors today. You can see on my screen. I'd like to thank Paul Hauge, Brent Hagan, and Jesse Barker for sponsoring the podcast. And all the money that comes in through sponsors goes to the Sanger Legacy Fund. Like always, we use that money to fund the Hall of Fame, give scholarships to seniors. We support the athletic and activity funds at West Hancock and any other community outreach that has a need. Please consider giving to the Sanger Legacy Fund or sponsoring the podcast. You can do that at sangerstrong.com. Way back when, I'm not going to do that today, but we do have prior episodes if you want to check those out and give those episodes some more views and those sponsors some more advertising. That would be great. Thanks again to Paul Hauge, Brent Hagan, and Jesse Barker. All right, Dick, we're going to get started talking about you.
All right.
Tell everybody where you are these days.
Well, we live in Arizona, and we have a home up in Payson, Arizona, and probably spending most of our time up in the Payson area. We have a business that is still active. And our oldest son is now president and is running that company. We have about 90 people on our staff, and we're in the executive search business, the headhunting business. So it sounds appropriate for a wrestler to be a headhunter.
I looked up your website, govig.com, and pretty cool. Yeah, that list of employees just going and going. I was like, holy cow, it's a big business. So that's
it's been an incredible business for us. And but anyway, I really appreciate your invite. Britt, Iowa, I have a lot of fond memories, and I always felt like Britt adopted me because my mom passed away when I was 2.5, and my grandparents, my goodness, they were in their 70s at that time, and they took my brother, who was 5, and myself, 2.5, in and raised us. But the city itself, there was people like Gilbert Gunther. I'm sure members of his family are still around in Britt, but people like that really helped me immensely.
So you were raised by your grandparents then? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah.
We had
a little 40-acre farm just south of Britt, about a mile, and so it was a small farm, but it was just a great relationship that we had.
Yeah. Did you do a lot of the farm work as a kid? Had a lot of chores?
Yeah. Work was something that I never lifted a weight, but I always felt like I had incredible strength, and I always felt like I was probably as strong as anybody I ever competed against. But it wasn't through weight training or calisthenics or anything. It was just through hard work, because boy, we just did a lot of hard work on the farm.
Yep. That was up
baling.
Until, yep. I tried baling hay for 1 day, and yeah, I figured out pretty quick how hard work that is.
Well, the funny thing, kind of a story on that, I wanted to drive the tractor because that was the easiest job, but I was so short and my legs were so short, I could not reach the clutch. And so as a result of it, I had to stack the bales, and I was picking up bales that were almost as heavy as I was.
Yeah, there you go. That's strength training right there.
But I worked a couple summers, almost every day we baled, and that's you handle bales all day long, and you've done a day's work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I slept for 3 days the day after I baled hay. So along with some allergies, that doesn't help. But yeah.
Right.
What else was growing up in Britt? What else can you say? Some of your friends, teachers, people that you remember from back then.
Oh my goodness. Nick Papadakis and I were the only two boys in Britt that started in kindergarten and graduated our senior year, which I always thought was sort of unusual. And a number of the girls that were with us the whole way, but Nick and I were the only two. And I'm not sure where Nick is, if Nick is still living or not.
I couldn't tell you. I'm not sure.
They used to have a candy kitchen in Britt.
Okay.
And they yeah, it was quite a business. And but we had a good class. We had a class of about, I don't know, 45, 50 kids. And it was a lot of support, involved with a lot of the sports, baseball, football, of course, wrestling. And I always wanted to be a basketball player, but I think I did choose the right course by going into wrestling.
You won a national title at University of Iowa. I'd say
Yes,
you made the right choice. So, yeah. Yep. I want to talk a little football before we get to wrestling.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you know this. I created the Britt West Hancock football record book. I started by making it for Coach Sanger's era, and now I've expanded it back to all the years prior to 1968. So I did a lot of research on you and your teams. You were a part of two conference championship teams in football, 1948 and 1951. So your freshman year and your senior year, you guys won the conference.
That's correct.
In your 4 years, you guys went 16, 13, and 1. And the crazy thing is you had 3 head coaches in those 4 years. And to still have that amount of success with different coaches, I thought was pretty cool. Don Keister, Larry Roth, and Sam Cataldo. What do you remember about those guys?
Oh my goodness, that goes back a long way. Sam was a piece of work. He'd been around a long time, and yeah, we liked that guy. And the other coaches, they were only there, I think, a single year, so I really did not get to know them that well.
Yeah. Speaking of Sam Cataldo, that name is pretty well known in the Britt Garner area because of funeral homes. Their family owns a funeral home or two.
Okay.
Down here at Interstate 35, where I teach, I mean, we're south of Des Moines, 30 minutes. The first day of school, when I had another 4th grade class, a bunch of kids in my room for social studies, I was looking at the roster and I saw a name that said Cataldo. And I'm like, is your family from the Britt Garner area? And he goes, yep. And I said, would you know what the name Sam Cataldo? And he goes, that's my great grandpa, I think it is. So like total small world type of thing. Like, what are the odds? Guy I just got done researching and putting in the record book, great or great grandson in my class. So
he was a good guy.
Yeah. What do you remember what kind of offense and defense you guys ran back then? I was obviously running the ball a lot. Do you remember what that looked like?
I think that we had a single wing, I think maybe our freshman year, but as we went in to my sophomore, junior, and senior, we went to just a regular T formation.
Yep. Yeah, pretty standard.
I quarterbacked. I was a quarterback, and so I quarterbacked those teams.
Did you get a pass much?
I would say maybe 10, 12 passes in a game. Nothing heavy.
Yeah. And I don't know if you follow West Hancock football much these days. We're winning championships still. 48-2 in our last 50 games. But in the last 40 years, with Bob Sanger, now Mark Sanger, if we pass the ball 6 times a game, we're like, why did we pass it so much? It is still a run-based offense, and I love it. I love just that smash mouth type football. So
3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yep, but man, we got the athletes right now. It's more like 8 yards in a cloud of dust.
Wow.
These kids are good. So some of your teammates that I found, Chuck Mockley.
Oh
Chuck
yeah.
is still living and doing well in Britt. He's actually on the alumni board with me. They conned me in. Bill Frito conned me into being on that board, and Chuck's on there, and he's the greeter. Every alumni banquet, he still stands at the door and welcomes everybody in. Jim Harvey, Mort Williams. Talk about Jim Harvey a little bit, because what I've gathered, he was fast. Do you remember him just being a speedster?
He was a speedster.
Yeah, he was one of those guys that could, in your era of football, there wasn't a lot of high scoring games. So, 3 scores was probably going to win the game.
Exactly.
And he seemed to be that guy that could bust off a 60-yard run at any time.
Are those guys all living still?
No, Chuck is, like I said. I'm not sure about Mort. Jim passed away. If I remember him, if this is the guy I'm remembering, he died on a golf course back in the 70s of like a heart attack or something.
I think you're right. I think I remember hearing about that.
Yep. It was like mid 70s. He wasn't that old, and just, yeah. Yeah, he would have been he'll be a future Hall of Famer, because a lot of his numbers and stats on the track and football field were pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Jerry Redden, Pat Grant, Dwayne Garman, Dean Hiscox, who I talked to at the state championship game. I'm going to get Dean to do a podcast. He is still doing great. Dave Shaw, Ken Cosgriff, John Needler, Gareth McMullen, Mel Hampy were some of the other names. What can you say about some of those guys you played with?
Oh my goodness. Dwayne Garman and I, we played a lot of sports together because we played baseball, and Dwayne played short and I played third. and Dwayne was, well, Dwayne did a lot of pitching. It probably was our main pitcher, the number one pitcher. And I take that back. He actually played center field. I was thinking of Chuck Mockley. Chuck Mockley was the shortstop. And I remember him being a senior when I was a freshman, and I played third base varsity. And a number of times he would back me up and and field a ball that I had missed.
Yeah.
And he was quite a baseball player.
Chuck Mockley told the story. I did a podcast with him. You can just go to YouTube and type in Chuck Mockley, Dan Crawl, and you'll find him. He told the story of his coach took the team to Chicago for a baseball game, and they got to watch Satchel Paige pitch. Were you a part of that team that year?
Yes.
Yeah, he was talking how that was quite the experience.
Oh, that was phenomenal.
Yeah. And people in Britt, Chuck is like, people don't believe me. They're like, there's no way you saw Satchel Paige pitch. And he goes, no, I'm old. Like, you come on, people. You gotta.
Well, Satchel
Paige
was quite old at that time.
Yeah. He pitched into his 50s, didn't he? I mean, he went quite a ways. Yeah, Chuck.
Well, they didn't discover him until he was, almost well beyond normal baseball player.
Yeah, and he did all right. Yeah, Chuck had some good stories about that. That was pretty fun to listen to. Your senior year of football, you scored 1 touchdown, a 45-yard touchdown run at Clarion in the first game of the season. Your only touchdown that year. Do you remember that run, that game? Yeah. It's like, if it's your only one, I'm guessing maybe you remember it. But yeah, I had one on defense, and I don't think, hopefully I'll never forget it. But yeah, so anything else?
Well, I remember us in that game, but I just run in the yardage that slipped by the wayside.
Yep. Yeah, been a couple years. So
yeah.
Yep. Anything about baseball and football you'd want to talk about that you still remember?
No, it was just I think that we just felt like we had a tremendous amount of support.
Yeah.
The business people, they were just behind us, and it was a lot of fun. It was, I think I learned a lot about life through sports at Britt.
Yeah. And you'd have a lot of big crowds, you said, at the games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Nothing's changed all these years later.
Yeah.
I watched a game on the internet the other night, a Tuesday night game against Buffalo Center, and the stands were still just packed for a Tuesday night basketball game, and the teams
Oh yeah.
are,
Oh yeah.
you know, it's a lot of fun to see the support still. So
I was on the kind of the very beginning of wrestling because that sport didn't start until I was a sixth grader.
mhm.
So, I was 3 years later, I'm in high school, but we didn't have much history at that time. So
Yep.
we started the ball. I guess I got it rolling, but boy, there's a lot of people that followed me because
Yeah.
Britt has certainly done quite well.
Yep. I told you on the phone the other night, I'm writing a book about football and wrestling in Britt. And yeah, you and your brother and a couple others were the first ones, but it has been fun but exhausting to just go down that list of holy cow, it's just year after year, state champ after state champ, runner up after runner up. And but a big thing I want to talk about was you were on a couple of those teams and individually that kind of really got the ball rolling because Britt tried to have wrestling back in the mid 30s, but it never really took off. They didn't really have
That's right.
meets. It fell apart. And then it was like
Right.
1946, I believe, when it started up. And so your junior and senior seasons is when you won state. But the couple years before that, 49 and 50, how did you do in those seasons? Do you remember?
I made it to state, but I got beat out. I didn't place in either my freshman or sophomore, and I don't think I even made it to state my freshman year.
Yeah. Your brother Bill made it one of those years, though, correct?
He made it to state. He didn't place, but he made it to state, and he was. My brother was quite good.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your brother?
In fact, his senior year, I think he definitely would have placed in state, but he failed to make weight.
Oh, yeah.
And so he did not get a chance to compete, but he was good enough. I think he would have placed.
Yeah. Tell us about Bill a little bit. Where did he end up after Britt? I know he passed away. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, Bill became a CPA, took accounting at the University of Iowa, had gone into the military and then served and was wounded in Korea, and then came back to the University of Iowa, got a degree in accounting, and then joined Arthur Young and Company and became a partner with that firm, and of course became a CPA.
Okay.
And then Bill passed away. Golly, had just turned 40, and he had bought when he was maybe 38, something like that, a motorcycle. He always wanted a motorcycle. And I remember him telling me earlier that year that he just felt the motorcycle was dangerous. He was going to get rid of it. And he had an accident with it that year, and it was fatal.
Shoot. Do you remember what year that was?
Well, he would have been he was 40, and Bill was about 3 years ahead of me.
Okay.
So 30.
Been about in the 60s then, early 60s?
Yeah, he's 70, late 60s.
Late
Yeah.
60s. Okay. No. Yeah, I did some research on him. I never saw that information, but just more on the wrestling side. So I was curious. Did you have any other siblings, or was it just you and Bill?
We did not. Just Bill and I.
Yeah. And you, I want to go back to your family too. You said your mom passed when you were young. What happened with your father? Because you said you were raised by your grandparents.
He was a small groceryman. He had just a small store, and after Mom passed away, he moved to the southern part of the state, and he had a small store, but he was kind of a one-man guy.
Yeah.
And he just could not take Bill and I, and the grandparents stepped forward and said,
we'll take him.
We'll take them. And they had raised 6 of their own at that point, and they had, I think there was the youngest son, Dwayne, was still at home, And so we had a big brother, so to speak, for at least a few years.
And were your grandparents Govigs, or was that on your mom's side?
Were they what?
Were they
Oh,
Govigs as well?
they were on my mom's side.
Your mom's side. So what were their names, your grandparents?
Benner, Benner, a
Benner.
German name. My grandfather came over at the age of 4 directly from Germany.
Okay. Yeah, I don't recognize that name. I'll have to do some research on that, as I have
Yeah.
all the Britt papers online.
He
I can
was a super guy, very well liked, a tall, slender, soft spoken, very, very well liked.
Nice. All right, let's get to your junior season, state title number 1. You were at 105 pounds as a junior in high school, which I always joke on these wrestling podcasts. I think I weighed that in about 2nd grade. So some of you lower weight wrestlers are just a different breed from what I'm used to. Those scrappy little dudes. So
Well, I sure wouldn't want to run into you on the football field.
I wasn't that good. So Cedar Falls is where the state tournament took place that year. In the first round, you beat George Giovanaxi of Franklin High, Cedar Rapids, 8-3. In the semifinals, you beat Don Luther of Olawine, 2-0. And then in the finals, some guy, you definitely remember this name. We talked about him the other night on the phone. Dick Kane from Algona. You beat him 3-1. You had already wrestled him twice that season. He beat you 1-0, and then you beat him 2-0. But you got him in the finals kind of when it mattered the most. What do you remember about that season at state and winning your first title?
I think the funniest thing, about 2 weeks after the state, there was always this tournament in Waterloo. And not exactly remember what the name of that tournament was, but it's a tournament that most people who went to state would go and compete in. And I got down there, and sure enough, I saw Dick Kane, and I knew that Dick and I were in for the 4th match.
Yeah.
And then the pairings came out and so forth, and the brackets, and it turns out Dick had gone up a weight. And I asked him, I saw it, Dick, what's this? You going up a weight? And it was kind of funny because he says, I've wrestled you 3 times, Govig. I don't want any more.
So you would have won that match, is what it sounds like. Yeah.
What's that?
You would have won that match, it sounds like.
Well, let's put it this way. I think I kind of got into his head a little bit. So,
yeah. But it sounded like you guys were pretty cordial, though.
We were. The Kane boys, Dick and Bob, were twins, and they were just good guys. They were from Algona, Iowa.
If I remember right, I read in the newspaper that after your match, you and him were just like having ice cream or pop or something. Yep, that was in the newspaper. So yeah, they just
was in the newspaper. I remember that.
Yep. And you asked me on the phone the other night about Dick. Dick passed away in late 2020. So not that long ago he passed. But yeah, between him and his brother and that Algona program from the 50s through about the late 80s were pretty solid.
Is Bob still alive?
That I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure. So yeah. So when you won that state title, what was the feeling? How'd that drive you for that senior season?
Oh, I think that it obviously is anytime you win a tournament like the state title, it's a lot of fun to be able to go through that, and a sense of pride, but also just kind of it shows that good hard work pays off.
Yeah. What was the community like for you and the team when you were winning those titles?
They kind of adopted Bill and I, because of our mom passing away and the grandparents raising us. We were just adopted by the community. So incredible support.
Yep. And I'm going to go back to your grandparents again. I'm intrigued by this. When you were in like junior and senior in high school, were they still alive and well raising you?
Oh, sure.
Okay, you said they were a little bit older when they took you.
Lived until I was in college.
Okay,
Uh,
that's what I was going to ask. I mean, if they were in their 70s when they took you in as a young boy,
yeah.
they
My grandfather passed away before I won the nationals, and I think maybe my freshman year he might have passed away. My grandmother lived, my goodness, into her 90s. I think she was 94, 95.
wow, do some
So
good.
we'd been out of college a number of years before she passed away, and I actually came out to Albuquerque where we went right out of college. Jan went to Cornell College. I went to university and got married, and then we moved to Albuquerque. And while we were there, grandmother came out to see us. So I thought that was pretty special.
Yeah, good for her, especially at that age.
Yeah.
And what about your dad? I know he wasn't raising you, but was he involved and keeping up on how you guys did, or was it hard?
I would, I'd talk to Dad from time to time, and I'd go down to Fairfield from Iowa City. It wasn't too terribly far. But Dad, he was kind of a workaholic, and he seldom came to the matches, but occasionally he'd come up to Iowa City and see a match.
Did you say Fairfield?
Yes.
That's where my wife is from.
I'll be
And
darned.
her parents and all her siblings still live around there. So we're in Fairfield quite a bit. I didn't know that. Yep. Let's talk about your senior year, title number 2. Like I said, you were title number 1 and title number 2 in the history of Britt. You bumped up to 112 pounds that year.
Wow.
Again, still second grade,
I really grew, didn't I?
Yeah. In the first round at state, you beat, I didn't get a first name, Tull, Tull of Independence. You beat him 5-0. In the semifinals, you got a guy by the last name of Harmon. He was from Cedar Falls. I didn't find a score to that match. And in the finals, you beat Leon Lopez of Davenport, and you pinned him in 2 minutes and 38 seconds to win your second state title. As a team, you guys were 4th. And to give people a little perspective on that, that was back in the days of the 1-class system. There was not classifications for size. So Waterloo won the state championship. Davenport was second. Mason City was 3rd, and Britt was 4th. And we were only 5 points behind Waterloo for the state title as a team. What was that like competing with these bigger schools? I mean, it had to have been a big deal for these dudes from Little Britt, Iowa, to compete against the city boys.
It's such an individual sport that I never really gave that much thought, whether they were from big school, small school, because it was an individual thing, and you could be good from a small school just as easily as from a big school.
Yep. Talk about your coaches. Who were your coaches at Britt at the time?
Well, Dick Black was my coach in high school, and I had Dick for I think 3 years. And Dick had wrestled at Iowa State Teachers College. Had not probably didn't achieve much in the way of wins or tournament victories, but he was a backup to Bill Cole. And Bill Cole was, Dick was from Davenport or from Fort Dodge, Iowa, and Cole was from Fort Dodge as well. And I'm telling you, this Cole was probably the best wrestler Iowa has ever put out, or one of the best. And he was so tough. And Dick Black wrestled him every night in practice. And Bill Cole, if you would ask him, I think he would say that Dick Black made him, because competing against him every night in practice meant so much.
So he's one of the best wrestlers on the team, but he didn't actually wrestle.
Well, Dick Black was, of course, he was our coach my last 3 years in high school. And I'm not sure how long he was at Britt, but I think he was at Britt a pretty good while.
4 or 5 years was all it was.
Okay.
And then he went up to Minnesota and became a Hall of Fame coach. Yep.
Yes, I remember that now. Yeah.
Yep. They even have a tournament named after him, I believe.
I was going to say, he made quite a name for himself in Minnesota.
And that's how Britt was. We had Jim Fox was the first coach, and went down to Davenport. and did all, we had several coaches like that left Britt, left a good mark, went somewhere else, and made even a bigger name for themselves. So,
Well, Dick or Jim Fox, when I was an 8th grader, he was the one that got me into wrestling because he asked me to be the manager for
Yep.
the wrestling team, and so I traveled with the team and had a chance to work out at times. But Jim Fox was not going to let me. I thought I wanted to be a basketball player, and at that time I was pretty darn good in basketball and had a good shot. And I certainly could have played varsity basketball in high school. Certainly my sophomore and junior, senior years. I wouldn't have my freshman year because we had an all-conference team. But I'm glad he rescued me because it paid my way through college.
Yeah.
On a scholarship. I had never done that in basketball.
Yeah. So yeah, you end up going to Iowa, and obviously we know now Iowa wrestling's pretty big deal. Where else did you get recruited, or how'd that even look back then with recruiting for colleges?
Oh golly, I had offers from Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue. I even looked at Annapolis and thought seriously about that. And somebody had lined up to sponsor me, and then I decided on Iowa. But I had a number of schools coming after me.
What was the big thing about Iowa that sold you?
I think it was the coach, Dave McCuskey.
Yeah.
Dave had been my high school coach's coach. Dick Black had gone to Iowa State teachers. And Dave had a number of national teams and was considered just an incredibly good coach. The interesting part of him was that he never wrestled himself.
Really?
He had never stepped on a mat, but he had been the assistant football coach, and the wrestling coach at the time got hurt, and they asked him to fill in, and that was history because in the making, because he loved the sport and he learned enough about it that he could coach it.
Yep.
Even if he couldn't do it.
Yep. Oh, and there's a lot of examples of good coaches that well, if you know your Iowa wrestling history for high school, one of the first ever state champion coaches was Adolph Rupp, who became, the legendary basketball coach at Kentucky University. He won a state wrestling title. He just was there. You need to be our coach. And he goes, okay. And then him and a student kind of ran it, and they won a state title.
That's interesting.
Just crazy back in the 20s or whatever it was. So
never had heard that.
Yep. Yeah, you can look it up on the Iowa High School athletic website. Right there.
He made quite a name for himself in basketball.
Yeah, he did all right. Yeah. So yeah, your last 2 years in high school, you went 51-1, and your only loss was to Dick Kane, the guy you beat in the 51 finals. Talk about what you did in the summer of 52, going to the Olympic trials. How'd that work? Could anyone just show up and compete? Did you get invited to the trials? How'd that look?
It's a good point. I'm sure my coach had something to do with it. And you did have to qualify. They did have, and I think that it was probably pretty much open. But you might have had to have some background to be able to get into that first tournament. But I won it, and then that got me to the state or the Olympic finals, and where there was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 wrestlers that got invited in each weight class. And then I think I got to maybe the second round, something like that.
Yeah.
But I got beat out. I got beat out by a national champion. So, and the only consolation I had was that my coach thought I should have won, but the guy who beat me, he was a 3-time national champion, and he deserved the victory.
And
He was
you were
better
just a
wrestler.
high school graduate at the time.
Yeah,
So it
I was
was
just out of high school, and Hugh had been, I think he wasn't a three-time at the time I wrestled him, but he had already won one national championship. So
yeah.
he was very, very good.
Yeah. What I found in my research, the trials were in Omaha. You won 2 matches. You beat R.J. Falwell from Kansas City. You pinned him in 8 minutes and 50 seconds. I was tired typing that match took that long. Uh, 8 minutes and 50 seconds, and then you beat Albert Iocchio. I didn't see where he was from, but you pinned him in 5 minutes and 33
See,
seconds, and those are your
that's
2 wins.
amazing. I
Yeah,
didn't know I had gone that far.
yeah. My buddies and I would wrestle once in a while after like track practice. After
Right.
about 30 seconds, I'm like, I got to be done with this, guys. This wrestling thing's exhausting. But yeah, 9 minute match. That's just crazy. So
It really is. Most people don't realize just how tough it is to go through 9 minutes, but it's exhausting.
yeah, I believe it. I tried 30 seconds of it, and I was like, nope, I'm good. So, then yeah, you trekked to the University of Iowa down in Iowa City. Your sophomore season, 1954, the national championship tournament was held in Norman, Oklahoma, and everyone knows Oklahoma's hotbed for college wrestling. Number one, how'd you qualify for nationals? What'd that look like?
Yeah, I don't even remember because um,
Did you have to win like the Big
I
Ten
think they
tournament?
had maybe like sectionals that you went to, and then
Yeah.
you had to take either first or second, and then you moved on to the finals.
Nationals. And it looks like there was probably 8 guys in each weight bracket because he wrestled 3 times.
Like yeah.
Because in that 54 season, in the first round, you beat William Allen of Texas A&M. You pinned him in 4 minutes and 31 seconds. And then in the semifinals, you beat Alfonso Vega of Purdue 4-3. And then in the finals was Joe Duno, I don't know how you say his last name, Duno, of Oklahoma A&M 5-1 to win the national championship. Did you have any idea when you stepped foot in Iowa City or when you started your sophomore year that it would end with a national title? What'd that look like?
I really didn't, but I will tell you that final match, I had wrestled that kid in a dual meet, and I had beat him. And let me tell you, I had incredible incentive that he wasn't going to beat me.
Yeah.
So I was very aggressive with him and handled him quite well. But I'll never forget that because we had wrestled, and I think in the dual meet we'd been very close. So he was a good competitor. But having the upper hand in that first match, I said I wasn't about to lose it in the second.
What was the difference between going from Britt High School to the University of Iowa? How much of a step up was it to go to that type of a level, or did you feel like it was a pretty natural transition?
Oh, I think to some extent, because all the guys that I were competing with and so forth, they had made the same transition, and it just was, I guess that wrestling took a bigger place in my life, probably in high school, because high school I did so many things, where wrestling, there was a lot of focus on it. And I was living probably 3-4 miles from the sports center where we worked out. And so every night, boy, in the dead of winter, I walked those 3 miles back to my, apartment or the housing facility. And, but I think the transition was a relatively easy one for me.
That's good. Man, times have changed though. Can you imagine a Iowa Hawkeye wrestler right now walking 3 miles in the winter back from practice. They're, you know, the
They were good.
accommodations they have for college athletes anymore has changed a lot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How did winning a national championship change your life, or was it, oh, this is great, and then kind of back to normal a couple days later, or did it add
Yeah,
some elements?
I never used it. I never I won that national championship. Second year, I feel bad in a way because I think that I had the skill set that I could have won all 3 years. But the second year, I wrestled a kid who literally stalled the entire match, and the kid apologized at the end of the match, and that he indicated to me that he knew he couldn't beat me, but he was just stalling. And the referee comes out, and I had come so close to escaping, so close to taking a number of takedowns, and it didn't get any of them. But this kid had never attempted anything. He had not made an offensive move, and the coach raised his hands based on he said the last 10 seconds or 15 seconds, something like that. And it was so ridiculous. And McCuskey could not believe it. But you could do nothing about it. The coach obviously had made up his mind that if it was a tie, he was going to give it to the other kid regardless, because the last 10 seconds had nothing to do with.
Yeah. And that was before nationals, right? Or was it at nationals?
It was at nationals.
Yeah. At nationals.
And then so then I set out. I didn't go out, and because I was in engineering, and I took about 22 hours, and I set out that first semester, and then I did come back, but I came back about a month before nationals. Probably never got totally in shape, and I ended up losing 1-0, and I'm not sure which round that was, but yeah, I lost 1-0.
Yep. And how about your senior year then? How'd you do that last year?
Because
I couldn't find much. I found quite a bit on the national championship year, but after that, I couldn't find a whole lot.
No. Well, the senior year was I lost that match 1-0.
That was the match. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was your junior year or senior year.
No, that was my senior year.
Yep. Let's talk about Dave McCuskey for a little bit. He coached at Iowa from 1952 to 1972. He was 160, 69, and 7 as a dual record. Did you stay in contact with him throughout the years? Whatever happened to him?
Well, not too much. Dave was a pretty quiet guy and pretty private. And I can't say that I had a lot of relationship with him after leaving college. But on the other hand, I'd see him occasionally because I'd go back to Iowa. Yeah. And Dave was he was a basketball player. He never wrestled, and he just came into the sport because they needed somebody to fill in after losing the wrestling coach, and he liked it so much that he gave up football and became a wrestling coach full time. And I thought he had gotten. I thought he was quite good because he really studied the sport, became very knowledgeable, even though he could not necessarily execute, he could teach. Yeah. And he also was a disciplinarian, and so being in condition was a big thing with him. I mean, he really pushed you, and I thought he did a good job.
Nice. And has he passed away since, do you know, or is he still alive?
I'm sure that he has passed away, and I'm positive of that.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look that up.
He was certainly in his 40s, maybe even the early 50s when he was coaching.
Yeah. That probably wouldn't be around anymore. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your wife and kids then. You said Todd, your son, is running the company now. Your wife, do you have any other children as well?
We have 2 sons. Youngest son is a medical doctor up in Canada. He and his wife both practice medicine up there. He went to Duke, wrestled for Duke, did not do anything particularly, had a good track record, but didn't win any, conference championships or anything like that. But he did. He decided his senior year to compete in the Olympics, and he decided not to do freestyle, which is more like a collegiate style, and he went Greco-Roman.
Yep.
And darned if he didn't win the qualifying tournament. And so he made it to the finals, and then he got beat out. But he competed in the Olympics.
Wow.
And that was a big deal.
What year would have that been?
Well,
remember
his senior year in high school. I'd have to.
Yeah, you know where the Olympics were that year? That will narrow it down a little bit.
Well, I don't know. And he didn't make it he made it to the
finals of the trials then?
No, I take it back. He was at the Olympics, but I don't know where it was at. I think Japan. I don't know.
Is that Japan?
Either way, I was just curious. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, my Tom thinks it could have been in Japan, but I don't know.
Okay, that'll narrow it down at least possibly. So, and what about Todd? He's the CEO now of the company. And what about Todd?
He's a super guy. Both of the boys are really supportive of mom and dad. We talk to them. Todd comes down up to Payson every week, and we go out and play golf. He and I have developed quite a golfing team, and we've won a few tournaments and a big tournament at our club up in Payson. And so he's up there almost weekly. But we talk to both the boys on a regular basis. It's a very close knit family. Jan's background, she was from my high school. So we met in high school.
What would be Jan's maiden name?
What's that?
Sorry, what's Jan's maiden name?
Horseman.
He's a horseman. Okay.
He's a horseman.
Like Paul Horseman?
Paul Horseman.
Yeah. Yep. I have lunch at Paul and Millie's house every year for Hobo Days.
Well, Paul would have been a cousin.
Okay. Yep. Paul's grandson, Doug, is my college roommate. We were roommates at Central Pella. So
that's a small.
I didn't know she was a horseman. No.
Yeah. And she was a music major at Cornell and then taught music for many years, but a super, super gal. And Jan and I have been married 65 years.
Wow.
Right now I'm 89 and Jan's 87. And I'd say Jan's doing quite well.
Good.
Few issues, but nothing serious.
Yeah. And you're still golfing, you said?
Oh yeah.
Still piping at 300 down the middle every time, or how's that look?
Well, if it's a high enough mountain.
Yeah.
No,
nice windy day.
Tell you what, I still play a decent game. I shoot my age every so often, and I was a single handicap for a lot of years. Today I'm probably like a 12 or 13, but I still go out there and shoot in the at times the low 80s, and I'm not in the 70s. Occasionally I might get in there, but low 80s, mid 80s.
What's the key? Just keeping it consistent, keeping it straight, not hitting any errant shots?
Well, and not trying to kill the ball, just have a good swing. And
I'm the high school golf coach down here. Right. And I have to constantly tell my kids, I don't want you to hit the ball 350 yards, because when they try to do that, they hit it out of bounds or they chunk it or something. I was like, just put it in play and keep it in bounds, guys. That's half the battle.
I always think that in my case is that that left hand is so important, keeping that the back of the hand in line with the wrist, so it's one plane. And then cocking it at the top. And then I think taking that club back and cocking it, and then just throwing the club through the hitting area. I just think that I'm throwing the club into the ball and I'm not hitting the ball per se.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. I'm going to make my golfers watch this podcast, or at least the end of it, and tell them that's how you do it. Yeah. I wish I could golf more someday when I'm retired.
I think
That's
it's
what I'm
great.
going to do. So,
And I take Jan out on the golf course. Sometimes we go out 4 or 5. I do not go out with any of the guys in the club. I belong to 2 clubs up in Basin, 2 beautiful golf courses. Nicholas did one of them, and Weisskopf did another. But the thing is that I take Jan out with me because it's a way to get her out.
Yep.
And the 2 of us go out there, and I just have a blast, and I hit extra balls, and I'm really not working on a handicap. I'm just going out there and more or less practicing. But I love the game enough that's my thrill. Just shooting 18 holes to get a score is not as much fun for me as going out with Jan and just hitting random shots. And
enjoying the day.
Get 2 or 3 extra, I do.
Yep. Enjoy the day, especially down in that Arizona weather. I wish I was down there right now.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Well, Dick, this has been great. I want to, if people haven't heard yet, I've been putting it out on Facebook, but I want to congratulate you. You are going to be inducted into the Britt West Hancock Hall of Fame class of 2023. With great class of people and teams. The 1986 girls golf team is also one of the inductees. So speaking of golf, but I'm the chairperson for the committee for the Hall of Fame, and about 10 of us get together on Zoom and we put in our selections and we talk about, who should be inducted this year. And you were almost unanimous between the 10 people. Almost everybody had your name on the list. And I thought that was pretty cool because some of the people on that committee don't study high school athletics as intensely as I do. And they weren't even born when you were winning championships, but they still know who Dick Govig is. And I think that's pretty neat that all these years later, people still hold you in high regard and your name is still talked about. And you're up there in that legendary status at Britt and West Hancock High School. So
well, I'll tell you that the town of Britt I felt like we were really adopted by them, and Ed Landsberg and Gilbert Gunther, and there's so many people in that town that did so much for us, and I'm grateful, and I thank you for this opportunity.
You bet. And the Hall of Fame will be in the first home football game this fall. And I know we talked that, getting back here might be difficult for you, but you will definitely be honored, and we'll have that recorded and I'll send that to you so you can see the induction. And we appreciate you were that one of those first people that got the Britt wrestling program going, and we're still seeing the success to this day. So it's pretty.
My golly, I'm still around.
You bet. Doing great.
We'll be seen.
Well, I appreciate you, Dick. Thanks for coming on.
You betcha.
I always end with go Eagles.
Dan, thanks a lot.
You
Appreciate
bet.
it. You
Thanks, Dick.
Have a great day.
You too.